Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy YTC. I'm back for part 2. I recapped it back in the bye week a day ago about the New York Giants 2022 to 23 season recap. I'm back on part 2 now. I think it was during the bye week. Heading into the bye week, we were 6-2. So on from that point, I wanted to get a receiver. People were starting rumors about Jerry Jeudy wanting to be traded. I heavily wanted Jerry Jeudy, but that was the only pissed off decision I was with Joe Shane outside of Daniel Jones not getting his 5th-year option. That was really the only pissed off thing I was pissed off about, to be honest. But overall, we were 6-2 heading into the we knew there was a talent gap that we needed for the heading into the second half of the year. It wasn't going to be easy, obviously, and it shows ahead of time. But I'll get to that. But I will say, the Giants did the most what they could just off of coaching and Daniel Jones' Saquon and the defense making stops when it needed to. But from this point now, let's get on to after the bye week. So we were 6-2, heading to week 10. We played Houston. We took care of business on Houston. It was a really good game running the ball wise. I think that was the last time Saquon had about 30 plus carries. The majority of the game was us running the ball. It clearly showed because Daniel Jones only had 17 passing attempts. Despite the 17 passing attempts, he did have a good completion percentage, and he had a 158 QBR rating. I think that was the highest rated of any quarterback at the time. I could be wrong if it still is or still isn't of this season, but yeah, Jones had one of the highest QBR ratings of that week. I think throughout the entire season at a 158 as a passer, I think. But yeah, it was a really good game for us, obviously. Slayton had a really good touchdown off of Daniel Jones throwing off his back foot. That reminded me of shades of Victor Cruz. I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw that game, definitely reminded me of Victor Cruz. Our defense came through. The majority of the game was low scoring because, our offense was struggling to drop a lot of open balls. Lawrence Cager had a drop in the end zone, but he still had a touchdown for his first career Giant TD in that game. I mean, the majority of the game was just us running the ball. That's why it was heavily low scoring, and, the majority of Houston points came through garbage time, but that's besides the point. We were sitting comfortably at 7-2. I will say, heading into Detroit, I did underestimate them, and that's when the weakness of the Giants started to explode. I think Detroit might have given the blueprint to defeat the Giants because Jamal Williams had, I think, 3 rushing touchdowns in us in that game. I mean, Detroit just dismantled us for the majority of the game. We couldn't stop the run. Jamal Williams was getting busy on us, and I think they gave the blueprint for the Giants because we're stuck against the run. So I guess they took advantage of it, and obviously we had to play from behind. It didn't help that, when it was close, to an extent. We could have came back if they ran the clock out, but Isaiah Hodgins, I think he fumbled the ball, and then that's when Detroit recovered, and that's what really sealed it. But yeah, either way, still an unacceptable game. Daniel Jones, that was one of his worst games of the year. I will criticize Daniel Jones for throwing 2 costly picks on a ridiculous 4th down situation, and I will bash Daniel Jones for underthrowing the ball Jimmy G style to the Aiden Hutchinson. That was one of the worst games I've seen from Jones in his career. Even though he has 300 passing yards, that's still inexcusable to have those picks, especially when you're driving in the field. Because half of those 2 picks, I think we were inside the 40, I believe. We were supposed to score, and we didn't capitalize on it. That was one of the worst games I got to see as a Daniel Jones supporter, in my opinion. But yeah. But next week, speaking of Daniel Jones, next week versus Dallas. It was a Thanksgiving game. I had the honor of watching on Thanksgiving, even though the majority of the game, it was close, but, Dallas ran away with it in the second half. Daniel Jones had a really good throw to Darius Slayton. That bomb on the right side still proved to me he could still air it out at any given time. It's just we don't air it out as much because we're a run-based team, obviously. But, yeah, that game proved to me that we can air out the ball whenever we want to. We can control the clock to an extent, but overall, Dallas had more superiority on the defense and more pieces on the offense to overpower us talent-wise. And that's the talent gap we're going to discuss later on. For sure, that's a real root of the reason we were losing these type of games to teams like Dallas, for sure. The week after, week 13, we played the Washington Commanders in MetLife. 7-4 heading into that game. For the majority of the game, it seemed like we had the Commanders' number. The only problem I had with Daniel Jones was fumbling the ball in the opening drive, obviously. Can't do those with turnovers. He has to cut down a bit in those turnovers just because whenever he did turn the ball over rarely, it was very kind of costly. I will admit that. Some of Jones's fumbles do come costly at times, but it's not often. But, it's every once in a blue moon now with his turnovers for Daniel Jones. But overall in that game, Jones did pretty well. You know, he drove down the field in certain situations that we needed him to. Saquon was running through their defense, and I think we had Darius Slayton. He had a good deep ball catch, but he dropped the deep ball again when we needed it the most. Obviously, our defense came through, but then it sold through the second half. I think the turning point of that game was when Jahan Dotson caught that fourth down. We could have sealed the game off of there, but you know, we sold on that moment and opportunity. We got to get better at closing out these type of games. We have to be more consistent at doing so. We can't just do it every once in a blue moon, every now and then. It's not going to work that way in the NFL. But that goes to show you the talent gap we still made it to the playoffs with, given the circumstances we were playing under. Anyways, the game ended in a tie. I felt we should have won that game if Graham Gano didn't miss the kick, but it is what it is, you know. The situation could have been a lot better, but there was that. I mean, it was short by 5 yards, but whatever. Anyways, I went to this game the week after, week 14, December 11. I went to that game versus Philadelphia. I'll tell you right now, I heavily underestimated Philadelphia this year, and I'm going to get to why. I heavily underestimated Philadelphia. Philadelphia was better than I expected because they clearly blew us out. The majority of the game, they just took over. They were bombing all over us. Jones looked completely uncomfortable. That O-line started collapsing on us, and Jones could barely get out the pocket without him getting two defenders on top of him. It's just ridiculous. The Eagles front seven, that's one of the reasons why they're in the NFC Championship game as of this recording. But yeah, I heavily underestimated Philadelphia in this game. I really shouldn't have, but that's my mistake there. I went to the game and unfortunately we got blown out. There were a few Eagle fans that were nice after the game, you know. Then and after, they're not the typical Philly fans that, you know, they're stereotyped as the majority of the times, but that's just because they weren't. That's because half of the fans weren't from Philly, actually. You know, they were just travelers from different states, so they weren't as, you know, Philly, if you get what I mean. But yeah, in that game, it was pretty decent to go to. I still kind of enjoyed myself, even if we got blown out. I did enjoy going to these games. I still do to this day, and I still will continue to go to these games. Nothing's going to deteriorate me. But enough about me anyways. The week after, we had to regroup. The Commanders game, I did not know why people thought we were going to lose to the Commanders twice in a row. Rarely do we lose to the Commanders twice. I did not expect us to lose to Washington twice. Especially with Daniel Jones as the quarterback. He knows how to play well against that team. He's always done that the same way. But even though the numbers weren't, you know, flashy or, you know, too up there, since he game managed the majority of the game he put up, he had no touchdowns and no picks, obviously. But that 4th and 9 drive is what really won me with Daniel Jones. He could drive it on the field, and we could win with him. I'll say that much. But yeah, we won, even though we won controversially because of a defensive PI, which probably should have been called. But then again, Washington got away with one against Chicago. But, you know, I guess it's a double standard when it comes to addressing those types of plays. Then again, it comes down to NFL officiating being horrible all around this year. But yeah, NFL officiating has been just terribly this year. And a lot of situational calls for a lot of teams. This was probably one of them for Washington's perspective, but it is what it is. Saquon ran the ball down their throats. We couldn't stop the run in that game. That was also another game we should have probably been exposed if they could have kept running the ball with Brian Robinson. He ran through our entire defense, not the first time, the second time as well. So I want to give context to that. I think it was the first time we played the Commanders in back-to-back weeks within 2 weeks of one another. So yeah. And then heading to the next week, right? After we got the victory, that's what really sold me on the team. Brian DeBall being a really good head coach. Then after the week, we played Minnesota. We should have won that game in my opinion, but you know, it was on Thanksgiving. I was hosting the game. I mean, Daniel Jones had one of his best games, but granted, the defense was really bad in Minnesota. You know, they had like one of the nearest dead last defenses in the league, obviously. And you know, Jones ate apart that defense, and Isaiah Hodgins really came into his own in that game. That's what put him on the map on the Giants, in my opinion. Really. He had a good game, and Richie James, he had a few catches, but, you know, he dropped the 3rd and 5 crucial one, which would have given us a touchdown if we would have kept that drive alive, but unfortunately we had to settle for 3. But live and let die, you know, but still, our Daniel Jones did what he had to. He drove down the field, and then Saquon scored the touchdown. We tied the game, got the 2-point conversion to Bellinger, and obviously our defense wasn't fully healthy secondary-wise to contain Jefferson, so they were just spamming Jefferson, and eventually they kicked the 60-yarder, and it seems like the Giants are cursed against 60-yarders for some reason, but that's beyond me. We lost the game 27-24. It was a really close game. However, since the Seahawks and Detroit lost that same week, we had a chance to clinch next week versus a Colts team that got blown out by the Chargers. And we took care of business in that Colts game, obviously, as you see in the score. Daniel Jones had one of his best games. He had 2 rushing, 2 passing TDs. He also had a huge amount of rushing yards and a lot of first downs. He also had a lot of crucial throws he made that were vital to us moving on the field. Our defense came through in that game. We held them to 10 points. Kayvon Thibodeau, regardless of the sack celebration controversy in that game, he did what he had to. But I understand it was a bad look for Kayvon Thibodeau, doing the sack celebration thing on Nick Foles. Yeah, I forgot. It was really bad in that game. He did that, but it is what it is. We still got the job done, even though he could have conducted himself a bit better. But then again, the Colts head coach Jeff Saturday should have been more mad at the O-line for the fact that they didn't stand up for Nick Foles. That's just the faulty on the O-line for not confronting Kayvon Thibodeau after the play. But it is what it is. But that was its first time we clinched versus the Colts, right? That was the first time we beat them in a very long time since Peyton Manning, and also the first time the Giants have clinched a playoff spot and have a winning record above 500 for the first time since the boat trip year in 2016, obviously. But yeah, I was ecstatic just because we made it this far because of the depleted talent gap we have among top teams in the NFL right now that are currently, in the NFC Championship game, AFC Championship game, or just the top teams in the league right now. We had a huge talent gap, obviously, which needs to be addressed this offseason, which I will discuss in part 3. But we played the Eagles. Obviously, we were resting our starters. I know a bunch of Niner fans weren't pleased with that. Same with Cowboy fans. But, I guess it was their decision to keep their players healthy, and it paid off, which I'll get to in the next 2 games after this. But the Eagles, yeah. I thought because we kept it competitive with backups, I was under this false delusion that we were going to be able to keep up with them. But I was just only fooling myself and blinded by hatred for Philadelphia. I really was. I'll admit it to there. I was wrong. I was really wrong. And also, yeah, my hatred for Philly blinded me to what actually was the reality, which was they were just a far more talented team, I guess. Nobody could change that, but we can change it in the offseason if we get a good team around to compete with Philadelphia next year. I will say that much. Anyways, we made the playoffs. We walked away. We rested our guys, and we scroll all the way down. I think it's the playoffs. We get to the playoffs over here. So I'm gonna keep scrolling down till we get to the playoffs. Hang on. No, hang on. Yeah, here was the playoff berth, I think. Yeah, we went into the playoffs. We played the Vikings. Daniel Jones' first playoff victory. We got it done. The defense came, even though they were getting cooked for the majority of the game. What Mike Kafka? No, not Mike Kafka. Mike Martindale was smart. Let Hawkinson cook and just take away Justin Jefferson and just tackle them so they don't get yards after catch, because Jefferson is dangerous when he gets open space. So it was a good game by Adoree Jackson, who came back from injury along with Xavier McKinney from the ATV accident. But we had a lot of guys back from the secondary. We didn't play on the last game in the Christmas game, but our secondary got it done. We locked them up. It was a high-scoring game for the majority of the time. Daniel Jones once again had one of his best career games, of course, against the Vikings defense, just to add context, but still. From a quarterback standpoint, he still had one of the best games. He broke a record for the only player to throw for 300 passing yards, 75 rushing, and 2 passing TDs. He broke the record, and obviously he also really showed to me he can make those crucial catches. For example, the Isaiah Hodgins catch was the selling point for me, that he played clutch like a playoff quarterback right there. That was an elite performance, I'm not going to lie. But overall, we got the victory. Minnesota did try to put up a fight, but Kirk Cousins was Kirk Cousins. I don't know why he threw a 3-yard check down to TJ Hawkinson with the season on the line, but that's beyond me. But we got the victory. It was the first time the Giants won a playoff victory since the Super Bowl year when we won the Super Bowl. But we got it done, and I was very ecstatic. I was crying on stream. Obviously, it's timestamped and whatnot. If you go check the video, it's definitely me crying my tears and me letting go of 10 years of frustration and losing for one playoff victory. Yes, I was that frustrated, but it proved to me that we have a future once we get right pieces around, which I'll discuss in the next video. Anyways, the week after, I should have known there was a huge talent gap, which Joe Shane even himself admitted to there being. I was just only fooling myself because I was blinded to the fact that we were just less talented than the Philadelphia Eagles, had this year, obviously. And obviously, yeah, my hatred blinded me for a lot of things, but still, they blew us out. They drove us down back to reality, and they gave us a wake-up call that we needed a good team around if we're going to compete with teams like them moving forward. We really do. But overall, I'll discuss my my grading on the season and players, in the next video. I'm going to head on out now. I'll save this for the next time, and yeah, YTC out.